Everything starts in perspective of learning. The spoken language has a certain priority over other categories of learning. This is the most natural function. This is what came first. Everything else came after, was elaborated by intellectuals, like the writing, the grammar, all this. First of all, we started communicating. For me, in my courses, very often I had this discussion with when students didn't like the book, I was asking them, like, do you want to learn this language without the book? It's not a problem for me, it's more fun. Also sometimes about motivation. Like, you have to have the right motivation, the right perspective on your language learning. Like, why are you doing that? And if you don't have that, you will struggle.
So welcome to the second podcast for the Vox Channel, and we have here again Igor. Igor, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation and for organizing all this.
And I mean, in this podcast, I think something that we would like to dive a little bit more deep is into the Vox methodology and how it's structured. Why is it different to other methodologies? Because at VOX-Sprachschule, like the method that you're using is different to other traditional methods. So maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yes, so I think the main difference where everything starts is in perspective of learning, right? So I think the most important thing in learning to speak languages is speaking, the effect of speaking, right? So the spoken language has a certain priority over other categories of learning, of the language, of the linguistic world, right? Because this is the most natural function. This is what came first, right? Everything else came after, was elaborated by intellectuals, like the writing, the grammar, all this, like this structural approach. This came later. First of all, we started communicating, right? So this is the natural order. If you look at in the history of the development of the language, first is the speaking, and then everything else. And I think approaching it from this perspective, like saying that the act of speaking has a more weight in the learning process than everything else. I think this is the right approach.
And also probably the like everything, since everything comes from speaking, also there is easier to understand it through speaking. I'm guessing the language itself.
Our brain is created for this linguistic activity, for the way, like for the communication, for speaking with someone. This is what our brain is made for, right? And what we're trying to do nowadays is doing it too abstract, like taking a rule or taking a word and then try to memorize it without context, without this active speaking that is a very important part that makes everything easier for the brain. And changing this perspective and taking it away from just dumb studying of grammar, of words, without the application of it. I think this is what is different in the Vox method.
Okay, and would you be able to guide me through like the method itself? Mm-hmm. Like, how is something that you do, and when you start from the beginning with the method, and mm-hmm. maybe also we can compare it to a more traditional approach and to see what is the faults or mm-hmm. the errors from the traditional mm-hmm. approach.
Yes. So we always start with the psychology and motivation, right? I think like after many years of language teaching, I saw that many students are doing everything right, but at a certain moment they don't do progress. So I was thinking like they're doing homework, I'm doing everything right. So where is the problem? Like why do they not progress? And I saw that it's also sometimes about motivation. Like you have to have the right motivation, the right perspective on your language learning. Like why are you doing that? And if you don't have that, you will struggle. Like you will not be able to prioritize your learning, and you will have to iterate. Like it's like trying to enter a closed door. So I thought about it for a very long time. I think it took me around 5 years. I was regularly coming back to it and thinking, like, what could it be? And then I had this eureka experience where I thought, yeah, it has to have with motivation, right? So you have to have an internal motivation that is helping you to make progress, right? Not forcing you, but helping you to develop. And it has to be internal, not external. So if you tell to yourself, if somebody tells you you have to make career, and for this you need to learn German, right? And you tell to yourself, oh, I need to make career, and therefore I need to learn German, right? Your brain will say, you want to make career? Okay, yes. It's very simple. It says yes or no, right? Depending on what you ask from the brain. So make career. Okay, let's make career. Like, please, like, why do you want to force me to learn a language? Like, you want to make career? Please make career. But if you choose your motivation with, like, I want to speak with people, with my neighbors, right? This is totally something different, right? Or I want to speak with my colleagues on the job, or I want to, if it's connected to a spoken language, this is the right motivation.
Find a beautiful partner.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Maybe, yeah. So, no, finding is also speak to a beautiful partner. This would be more of an internal motivation that is connected to a spoken language, right? If you want to find a partner, you don't need a language for that. Like the brain will say, okay, go and look what does it have with the language.
That's
yeah.
true.
It's more like if you want to speak with maybe with girls, or like communication, and that's what we're doing in the first lesson. We're defining an internal motivation of the student that is connected to the spoken language, and then we try to create an atmosphere of where you can do mistakes, where it's allowed to do mistakes, where it's even obligatory to do mistakes, where you have the environment of collecting your mistakes like jewelry, like precious stones, like whatever.
Even in the notebook that you usually give to the students. I mean, I've been a student myself, so I send it. Like, you have a special place for the mistakes that you can write, and you can collect them as a small stepping stones in your journey, right?
Yes. It's part of the method, I think, that's integrated. That's why we developed our own notebook, in order to normalize the notes and to bring more structure in. And by the way, the first page of the notebook is the contract with yourself, where we define your internal motivation. And you have to sign it with the date and your signature. And the idea is that you found with the teacher your internal motivation, but then you can make a copy of it and put it on your fridge. And in terms where you struggle, why you want to make the effort, you can look at this contract and remember what is your internal motivation. Like, what is the real reason why you're learning German? The profound real reason connected to the spoken language, right? And it should give you more motivation, motivate you. Yeah. Then there are different other aspects, right? That normally, like concentration on the verbs as well, which is very important. I mean, verb is one of the most important functions of the language in general, right? This is what emulates the space-time continuum, right? If you don't use a verb, you cannot talk about reality. Yeah. And the language is made this way that even when you don't use the verb, you are using it actually. For example, when you say, coffee please, so you didn't use the verb, but actually you meant, could I have a coffee or could I buy a coffee? So you used a verb implicitly, although you didn't speak it out. And it has to be like this, because if it's not like this, it was not a phrase about the reality, right? So the verb is something that is very critical, and in the method, I think this realization is also very important, because if you come on a certain level and you didn't fix your verbs, or you don't know enough verbs, or you're making mistakes with verbs, then we're shifting your focus first on verbs, because without the verbs you cannot build. Like, this is the base, the most important, and they are present in every sentence. So it means if you are making mistakes in verbs, it's going to be difficult. And on the other hand as well, if you start to learn a language, you learn 40-50 verbs, you have the feeling that you speak the language, because it's so abstract. It's more difficult to show with hands, right? And it gives you kind of a freedom. Everything else you can show with a finger, right? I want or I want something like. This is also a very good tip for starting to learn the language. Learn like 20, 30, 40 verbs, and then you're gonna feel like, wow, I know how to speak already.
They say it's very. I sometimes read about people who are trying to hijack or do like a growth hacking for a language, and they will take like 100 the most common used words, and out of that the verbs, and then out of that they could be like at least speaking on the streets and stuff like that.
Yeah, there is a danger of such statistics, right? Of the most used verbs or most used words, because they are all made based on some corpora, right? So it's based on written language. And there is a big difference between the spoken language and the written language. I mean, there are PhD works that are being written, that have been written, like there are hundreds of them probably, about the difference between the spoken and the written language. And they're really not the same. And I think the most successful, the most useful vocabulary that you can learn is your personal vocabulary, that is covering your personal universe, linguistic universe. Not learning new words, because in those 100 most used words, maybe there are some of them that you don't use. So it's not true for you. It might be true for someone, but not for you. I think the most time-saving and most successful is to think for yourself, what are the first verbs, the first words that are coming to your mind? And then write them down, and these are going to be your personal words that will bring you to speaking the fastest, actually. This is what we're doing in vocabulary learning in the method.
Very interesting. So to do a recap with the method, I'm like, there is much more definitely, but first the motivation,
yep.
And then you start to like focus a little bit on the speaking on.
Yes, so there is, in the first lesson we don't do German or other language at all. We are speaking about the motivation, the psychological barriers, the imitation, about strategies, how kids are learning, what brings them success actually, and what did we forget that made us successful in language learning at that time? Like, what can we make use of it or not? And what else? And then, the role of the exaggeration, for example, how the exaggeration can help you, how to memorize things. I think this is also a very important part, because many people don't know what it means to learn by heart, how to learn by heart without losing time, right? And then we start by learning by heart some small talk phrases, right? So that you already feel confident about something, so that you can go in a group of mother tongue speakers and you can already lead a simple conversation, although you still don't know how to build a phrase, but you know certain expressions, right? This is a good jump start, right? To learn them in a way that they sit well in terms of pronunciation, melody, and you for sure you know what they mean, right? And then the method is how to help you to build a phrase. without losing time. I think this is the biggest task in any language, how to build a phrase, how to use the subject, the verb, the object.
Without losing time, you mentioned.
Without losing time, yes, because you can for sure if you if you don't take a systemic approach in that, you start to lose attention. Like you start to disperse attention over different topics, and it confuses you. Yeah, you have to be aware of the core, right? Like what is the verb? How does it work? The declensions, and this is it. Like in German, it's the declension. After the declension, there are a few topics that are difficult. Like there's nothing that is like you just need to learn the vocabulary afterwards and understand how to put them together, the norm. But in terms of grammar, the declensions is the most difficult part, right? So the grammar learning that we are focusing on is the declensions a lot, right? But it's very fast. I mean, I saw people who were learning how declensions work like after 2 lessons. It's possible. Like many people think like, wow, German, like life is too short to learn German. Like this is what I've heard a lot.
I heard that before.
But when you speak about that, is actually you mean declensions are complicated. It's like nobody knows how to learn declensions. So it's just enough to have somebody who can give you a clear idea on how to learn declensions efficiently, clearly, so that you can integrate it in your thinking process.
Okay. And in this process, in the methodology, you are using as a resource, you have the notebook, which is like a custom notebook with different aspects and different parts. But you also use a traditional book, right?
Yes.
Why is and what is the purpose of the traditional book in the method?
Yes. So obviously it has text. It has, and this book, it's not. I mean, all the books have deficiencies, unfortunately, right? And you can criticize every book, but in this book there are good texts. There are dialogues. There is, for example, in the beginning levels, A1, A2, they concentrate a lot on the verbs, and I think this is fundamentally very important. And not many books are doing that. Like there are many books who are doing other things that are, I think, don't correspond to a successful learning process. Just taking time. Like in a lot of books I see, they're just trying to occupy time, kind of. But it's not leading you straight forward to your target. And so it's helping the teachers to prepare the lessons, for sure. And there are still parts of the grammar that you learn in the method, but then there are exercises where you can check your progress as well. And many people need the book. Like many people still have the imagination that I need to accomplish the book, right? And for me, in my courses, very often I had this discussion with when students didn't like the book, I was asking them, like, do you want to learn this language without the book? It's not a problem for me. It's more fun, right? And some of them decided, like, I had those courses without the book. It was like the most amazing courses ever. But in most of the cases, they're like, no, I need the book. I need to accomplish, like, it's for their internal security feeling that they are doing something official, accomplish the book. And sometimes when they don't finish the book, they complain, but we didn't finish the book and stuff like this. So there is a psychological part as well, I think.
And in terms, the book is probably also because they are divided in the international level, the A1, A2, it's called the international level, right?
It's, there is a European framework of reference, which is called, and it describes on which level you should be able to do what.
Okay. And in these terms also, is the method also adapted to the, for example, certifications or exams, although it's not the main purpose, because the main purpose is to speak?
It's a good question, right? So the method is taking care of, for example, I mean, there is a discrepancy with the European framework of reference and the method, because since the first level, since A1, we are, for example, learning all the declensions. We're learning like things that actually expected to work only on B1 level. So on A1, on A2, and on B1 level, you set the fundamentals, right? The European framework stretches it across the levels, like different grammar topics, but it's not very natural in my opinion. That's why I think it's very important to allow a student to build a phrase, so that from the beginner levels they are able to communicate independently when they get some elements like the verb, the subject, and the object, so that they can start building phrases. And in different subdivisions, like in other systems, it's sometimes not possible until B1 level. And I think it's a mistake, right? Because you are caught in a course, and it takes immense time before you start to be independent, be communicating, and there is a danger that you get frustrated and you get disgusted by this process. So I think it's very important to give the feeling to the student that they can speak independently since the beginning and build the phrase, like they know everything, and then it's only words that they need to learn. I think this is the biggest target. Yeah.
Okay, and in terms of, for example, exams, certifications, and stuff like that, do you work on also, like if they want to take it for that, or is like, since the method maybe starting from B1 or something like that is when you are encouraging to, because some people maybe they want to take a certification and maybe it's not worth it to take it in low levels or base.
Yes. Well, the exam is a different topic, right? So what's the exam and the spoken levels, they are not necessarily interfering, right? So I know people who learn how to do exams, but they cannot speak, right? So there are different strategies that you can apply to excel in both of them, right? And we have exam preparation courses because it's a part of the integration process as well. Like you need an A1 exam certificate, and we are also a certified TELC exam center as a school, and you can do that to get the paper. And after 1 year, for example, when you arrive to Switzerland, normally you have to hand in the A1 certificate in the migration office to be able to stay in Switzerland, right? And then if you want to get a C permit, you need to have a B1 level, and depends, like A2 or B1 level, depending on the countries, I think, if the rules didn't change. And if you want to study, you need a C1 level. So there are a lot of, like, many institutions, many scenarios where you need the exam, right? And we're offering that as well. For sure, I think as our teachers are also always trained into the method, they are trying to integrate that also in the exam preparation courses. I think principally the exam is the same as a normal language course, the exam preparation course. It's just like a business per se, right? They have their structure of the exams. If you have never seen their exercises, how they look, you could fail the exam even if you're a mother tongue speaker. So you just need to have worked with the exam preparation book, and this is a big business. I mean, there are TELC preparation books, there are Goethe preparation books, and there is a lot of money involved, so that you buy those books.
And this is something that you also see a lot with people that maybe, okay, yes, I have this certification, and then when they start to speak, they have to think such a long time because they are like trying to find the grammar in their heads and they are not even like flowing. And maybe some person who is maybe not certified in that sense, they might be like much more fluent and much more integrated into the language itself.
Yes, it's definitely. The exams are not always. It's a good indicator, probably, because you have to do an effort, right? And if you're lucky, if you're talented, you will reach your goal, right? But it might be a difficult path or an easier path.
For those interested in learning languages with Vox, we're having a special discount for only people watching this video. You can check more information down in the description.